Hi everyone, my name is Marija. I'm content lead here at HTEC, and today here with me is Ognjen to discuss everything related to medicine and the current technology trends. So Ognjen, if you would please like to introduce yourself to our audience.
First of all, thank you for having me. And if we were in some sort of informal setting, I would definitely say one thing, which is the only thing I don't do for the company, and that's I teach statistics at the University of Belgrade School of Medicine. And I'm a machine learning engineer and a domain expert when needed.
Okay, so domain expert, teacher, machine learning engineer. My first question for you is, why do you hate spare time?
You'll be surprised. So when you parallelize so many things, when you multi-thread, nobody has full view of what you're doing. See, you're already impressed, and it's not really. It's all smoke and mirrors. Trust me.
Okay, I will still choose to trust you on all the topics that we are going to discuss here, because I think you're really well positioned to discuss our topics. Because I want to talk about personalized medicine, I want to talk about AI, I want to talk about how it has shifted medicine in the sense that technology is no longer just like supporting medicine. It's no longer just, so to speak, something that's auxiliary to medicine, but it's actually something that is indispensable, and that actually reshifts the entire medical technology and healthcare space. So what's your take on that?
My take is, first of all, you're correct. We are kind of we say that we're at the crossroads of some sort, that we are entering a new era, that this is some sort of milestone. But to be honest, this has been a long time coming. There are some major changes in the past 1 or 2 years, but I have been in the space of personalized medicine since 2016. And my expectations, the expectation that were set up for me by my peers and my colleagues at the time, I was in the field of genomics. I kind of expected that in 2025, where we are now, that we would be in some sort of sci-fi movie, that the personalized medicine, in the sense of buying medication and the technology supporting us, as you said, even at the supporting stage, would be much more advanced. This never came. And still, I still hope, but I think that LLMs and current trends, as you said, that they would remind us what huge possibilities we have in other areas, and that medicine shouldn't be. It should be like the flagstone of things like that, and not something that kind of lags behind. So we'll see. I mean, we'll discuss it in detail. I don't want to sound disappointed. I'm not, but I expected more.
Okay, I guess there's more to come, but it also has to do probably with, all the hype that was created. Whenever such a major technology shift emerges, everyone like naturally starts to think only about, the good stuff it will bring on, and you don't stop to think about, okay, so this will bring a lot of new stuff, but it will complicate so many things, from regulation, from compliance and everything, and even I discussed already with some technology experts, like, okay, so now you have some, let's say, high-end solutions, AI solutions for nurses, etc. But if it doesn't fit into their workflow, it will ultimately never be adopted. So technology itself is not a guarantee of anything, right?
That's true, but there is something that people always consider, which I've never, in my lifetime, and I've never seen happen on a large scale. We always wonder what's going to happen with other people's jobs. And that is, of course, a valid question. It's happened throughout history, and it is problematic from many standpoints. So I don't want to diminish that. But in a way, I've never seen that being the most important implication of some development. And to be fair, the only, not whole positions, of course, but the only parts of somebody's job that were eliminated by technology so far in my life were parts that were kind of toil, repetitive work, which was always supposed to be done by machines in an ideal world.
Yeah.
So for now, I am optimistic.
Yeah. Okay. So you already mentioned you are a genomics expert, right? So can you walk me through genomics a bit?
I'm not sure if you remember, I've seen it first time when playing games in Civilization. There was that Human Genome Project, and somebody first time in 2003, I think, they read the human genome in total. This was like some sort of huge milestone in development, and it gave the impression that we read some sort of holy scripture of biology and life, and that something major is coming, and it did. It did transform many things for us, and that kind of kickstarted the field of genomics. There is some definition nuances between genomics and genetics. Genomics is supposed to be a bit more overarching, and it quickly gave rise to computational biology, which is sometimes synonymous with bioinformatics. I mean, for purposes of this discussion, they can all be the same. We can call it computational medicine, computational biology. And the idea is that we started large-scale analyses into the human genes, human DNA. And we assume that since DNA is like the core recipe for creating a human being, that all the secrets would be there. And this is how I was introduced there. I was a DNA expert initially. I knew there were people who deal with RNA, other stuff, but I consider them to be somewhere down the line. And then we realized that it's not everything is in your DNA, essentially, because DNA is kind of static, the same throughout your life. There has to be something more dynamic, time-consuming. Then we started investigating RNA, which is obviously transcribed in time. It's more quantitative than DNA, then that's transcribed to proteins, then we get metabolites, and all of those are called omics. Genomics, transcriptomics, proteomics, all those omics, they just get more and more complex, and we have to go down this pipeline, which I assume we wouldn't have to, and now again and again, we are shifting the focus downstream, which is something doctors have always done. When you say metabolomics, that's basically measuring stuff in your blood, right? We always knew that's where the information lies for old-timey medicine we used to practice. And now we are integrating. We realize that there isn't one layer we should be looking at. It's like multi-omics now. It's still sometimes called genomics in a wider sense, that we are bringing it all together, and we are bringing machines into it, computers. We are bringing data, algorithms. It's necessary. It's big data in every sense of the word. And I feel that again, we were, I was optimistic because I underestimated the problem. It wasn't just like, hey, we now know the mutations you have. We know your genetic code. By the way, we read the genome a few times more. We actually announced again that we read it completely a few times. I think a few years ago there was the definitive. We read all of it, even the junk DNA, but that's not really the point. We still haven't uncovered all the complexities, and that's exciting, right? Don't be that guy who says we know everything now. You'll be embarrassed in like 10 years.
Yeah, and I guess a big part of that would not have been possible if we didn't have that computational power that we have today. So like, I guess your career choice, or not career choice, but your professional, choice to be as you said, statistics plus big data. It's not a coincidence.
It seems so well nuanced. Like I never had like the foresight to do that. All my choices were either random or wrong from the like a short-term perspective, but in the end it all comes together because you wouldn't believe the analogies that are there. It is large-scale statistics. There is some sort of modern genomics is parallelization in genome sequencing, which is comparable to high-scale computing. You wouldn't believe it how it all neatly comes together and kind of simply. I sometimes think that when you think about large language models, ChatGPT and things like that, when you wonder, no matter how big they are, how do they encompass so much human information? I was thinking about that, and maybe it is because it's all kind of not repetitive, but there are so many analogies that can be used that are redundant between the fields. They do come together, and those interdisciplinary fields like computational biology, that's awesome. And I think that's more than like nobody will be just one thing. You cannot be just an old-timey biologist. I think you have to adopt technology.
Yeah. Well, I guess, my career choice, and I studied English, the English language and literature, and one of our subjects was, for example, cognitive linguistics or transformational generative grammar. So it's everywhere, and everything is in a way a pattern. It's just about perceiving those patterns.
Language is maths. We see that now, right?
Yeah.
It kind of it's in there. You can use those language models to do. There is an LLM lasso, which is an algorithm for simple mathematical calculation for regression. So I feel that those patterns we just didn't see it before. It's math. Math is everywhere. We knew it's fundamental. So you told me that you wanted to study math as well. You did in a way, right?
Yeah. Okay, so that brings us to personalized medicine, right? So we can do it now on a whole different level than was possible like 15 or 20 years ago. So what does this mean in practice? We touched upon, what genomics and mentioned data and everything, gave a few definitions, but what does it mean in practice for me as a patient?
It's a good question. I think for now, technology has been coming in kind of silently behind the scenes into the medical field. Primarily in maybe we call it radiomics now. It's another omics. So in medical imaging, in histopathology, everything that's image related, the revolution has been there for 15-ish years, and we definitely see it there. We don't maybe see it as patients, but definitely the radiologists they do see it. For other things. It's slow. I'm not sure we register that because there aren't those huge leaps that we are used to that kind of get our attention. For example, prenatal testing, non-invasive prenatal testing, NIPT tests, which are quite common today. They were 10 years ago, they were on the fringe of genomics for me because you had to extract fetal DNA from mother's blood. It seemed like it's a technical issue, then algorithmic problems, signal to noise ratio. In a sense, there's so little of that compared to mother's blood. Now it's standard. It's very precise. We can detect even smaller anomalies, not just major disorders. It's well established in the clinical practice in a sense that clinicians can interpret that, which is very important. I'm not digressing too much because whenever science goes too far in front of the clinical implementation, it just hangs loose somewhere. And I think that this is so complete that it's I'm so proud because this is something that I've seen. I'm not, of course, I didn't develop that.
You didn't?
No, but I see something that I've seen like grow, as if I'm looking at a tiny infant grow. And this is, I'm so proud. As patients, we are not aware how much of a game changer that is. And how much better that is, for example, that prenatal testing is much better than double test, triple tests, much more sensitive. It's simply,
which
it's
are basically
revolution.
just statistics,
Exactly. And this statistic, this just statistics is now so refined with additional because we are actually looking at the baby itself. It's not just the ultrasound. It's not the imaging of mother's blood. It's simply the layer of information we tapped into, and that this is just promising to extend further. So as patients, I'm not sure why I feel that cancer is somehow the big C. It's always something that's of interest to us. I'm not sure that we as common people, we don't like to think about it, and I don't like to think about it either. I have to sometimes, but I think that field is always deceptively slow because we still feel that we know that people are dying from cancer, and that it's still the therapy is taxing. We cannot say that this problem is even halfway solved, but still the progress, and we can. There are some examples where the progress has been paramount. And again, we as patients, we are still the same level of concern that we were 30 years ago.
Yes. But as you say, I don't believe in huge leaps in medicine. Change has to be incremental because
gradual, correct.
Because of the very nature of the discipline, and human lives are at stake.
Exactly, and we can talk about it. Whenever you have huge leaps, we have huge distrust over it. We saw it during the pandemics. In a way, we want everything to be tomorrow, but we are concerned when it's tomorrow. And I understand both standpoints. In a way, we have heavy regulatory burden burden which is there to protect us, but we know that we pay the price for simply wanting our therapies tomorrow. There will always be a patient who won't make it in time to wait for this new approved regulated therapy. And this is like a trade-off that we have to make.
Yeah. So this would be like the other side of the medal. We talked about, everything, all the positive stuff that AI, or not just AI, but technology in general, has brought upon, but we didn't touch upon. So if you can like spend some time talking about what are the current challenges, that in the medtech and healthcare space that are brought about by these new technologies.
That's a good point. Yes, we shouldn't focus only on the good stuff. We need a complete picture and the dark side as well. So let me say that first, I would say that the USA regulatory agency, FDA, Food and Drug Administration, it's usually taken as for new and fringe technology. It's usually referenced as the main body who introduces new stuff. The European, from my knowledge, the European Medical Agency it has distinct rules which are in some way adapted to us, and which I personally like better. So they are more cautious and slower, but they also they influence each other. So personally, I interact more with the FDA and in the area of medical devices. And simply the set of adverse effects and of benefits is kind of different. But I saw the regulatory burden firsthand. And I have to say, first of all, that the requirements, they're not unreasonable. You'll be surprised. So, for example, there isn't, as far as I know, as far as I've seen, there isn't a prescribed accuracy. They're very liberal in terms of what you have to prove to them. But whatever you decide on proving, you have to make it official, transparent, reproducible. And that makes sense in a way for me. But still, the burden is heavy. In terms of you need to have visibility of what you have been doing. You have a history and provenance for all the work you've done, which is very difficult when you're doing prototyping. We all in technology and fast moving things, we like to rush this, prototype this. And then if you start doing everything from scratch, the way it should be done, you have a feeling that your productivity is getting choked. And that's, again, a trade-off, I would say. And this is one of the dark sides. So it feels stifled, everything that's going on in the development. And again, it feels like everything is going slower. But I promise you that everything I saw from those agencies is meaningful. There are automated checks, which are now here to help us. There are humans in the loop, which are actually there to review, to discuss, to make stuff more lenient when it makes sense. So I kind of really believe in that system, and I saw it firsthand in the company 3 times, from inception to completion, and I really feel that this is in a good place.
Yeah. And when you think about it, you said launching, for example, a new medical device, there's so many different angles to consider. So you have patients who are end users, but in a way, clinicians are also end users, right? So you have stakeholders, you have those who finance it all, so you really need to think. I can just imagine, speaking from my position, but you really have to take so many things into consideration that, maybe the slow pace is the only way.
Maybe to be fair, even though you gave me no guidelines or restrictions, when I'm talking about this, I'm thinking of all the sides. If somebody would be offended by this, if maybe I'm being inconsiderate towards patients or medical practitioners, because those angles, they can be completely opposite in some ways, right? And this is, but in a way that keeps the balance going. Whatever anybody thinks, the complexity of the area where everybody is represented kind of makes it all together, on average, makes it fair, I think. There are other problematic parts with that. So, for example, we have, with all this information, we also have privacy issues, and we keep talking about that. This is something we know the data is the new gold, the new value, everything. But the story about patients owning it in every system I've seen. Everybody says that patients own their data, but in reality, that's not true. And I've seen that when I teach at the university. In the end, first of all, it's questionable whether people know what they're signing, whether they know what it will be used for. In the end, they might not care now, and that's okay. I've never seen anybody being harmed by this. But privacy is not something that should be addressed only when an issue arises. This is something that we are consciously setting up in advance. And in a way, this privacy is hindering you. So there is an open source available data is not plentiful. If it truly exists at all from a really public perspective, you always need to have some checks, which is, again, it makes sense, right? Somebody's regulating that. But then it means that if you were some sort of savant and you wanted to explore something, you cannot. You have to be part of an institution. You have to be validated. It's not easy. You cannot apply just like as Marija Mrsic and then just say, hey, I want to try this. Yeah. My parents are doctors. Let me try this,
Yeah, so you basically, have all these institutions that basically sit on data lakes, yes. but it's not
fragment, tiny lakes, like data land of 1,000 lakes. It's incredible. The fragmentation is I mean, everybody knows. I know this is not a revolutionary, but there is something. Those are all missed opportunities, I feel, and that this is not something that a single institution, a single company can solve. But we still need to reiterate that, like, we can do better. I'm sure of it.
Yeah. And, when it comes to AI in general, not just in the medtech space, we really do need some consensus on some ground rules,
Yes.
if we are going to move forward together, right?
Definitely. But, when those rules finally move forward, when FDA goes out and says, okay, we are facilitating this, we are allowing this, I feel that's noteworthy. For example, recently FDA publicly allowed using all those modern technologies, namely something called digital twins or personalized medicine, all of that, using it in those clinical studies, which are fundamental things that are used for approval of medical devices and medication, right? You can use algorithms as medical twins to facilitate that and speed up stuff, or maybe save on costs or save on adverse effects. Do not use test subject, do not sacrifice animals. It's all relevant. It's all a resource that's being wasted, I think.
Yeah. Okay, now you mentioned digital twins, and that's something I really want to explore. So if you can...
my bad. Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't have. It's a very complicated and new area.
I have a twin, not a digital, a real twin. But tell me something about, I want to hear about digital ones.
I feel that the experience might be somewhat similar. So in theory. Digital twin is anything that's algorithmic that would behave in the same way as you towards some external stimuli, or which involves medication or anything we can do interventionally to it. And it's not easy. So humans are big data systems, huge systems with trillions of parameters, literally. And every kind of model it can be good, but it can never mimic everything. So those models, they have to be at least in some way specialized, fine-tuned, trained. It's a complicated area. But let's say that you can, there are multiple versions. So for example, you can, at this stage, there are companies that are doing that. I won't discuss them, but that have made their jobs with proprietary algorithms that can emulate and simulate a patient, which is major. So an individual can be simulated with a complex algorithm. This is the science that we have now. But let me ask you, like your estimate, because I was surprised. If I told you the majority of studies, at least observational that I know, they're called case control studies.
Okay.
And when you're doing clinical testing, you have patients that are taking your medications, which you can call them as cases, or they are people you're intervening with. And then you always have controls, which are normal individuals. They don't have any disease, or at least not the one you're testing, and then they're not taking any medication, right? So what would you say? Is it more difficult to find people to test medication on, or to find healthy controls, or to find clinical cases, or to find controls? healthy controls?
That's a very tough question.
What would you assume as a doctor? You want to do a research. Is it
Okay.
easier to find somebody who is diseased or somebody who is healthy?
I want to say, it's more difficult to find someone who's like has an illness, but I fear that the correct answer, if there's a correct answer here, is more difficult to find.
Your
someone who's
intuition
healthy.
is spot on. Mine wasn't as good. I was so surprised because it seems that like there are so many healthy people all around, but the truth is that they're not available to you as a clinician. And while unfortunately diseased people, there are aplenty, right? For you. And it's interesting that controls are so difficult to find. There have been studies that, for example, did something called meta-analysis. It's an interesting thing. When you want to increase the power of your study, you take like 10, 15, 20 studies, you unify them in a new study. There is there is elegant math to do that. But like in the end, you get a study that has like, if you merge 20 studies of 500 people each, you get a study of 10,000 people. And you assume, since you merged both patients and controls, that you have now 5,000 of each. And then it turns out that all those studies use the same set of controls. You don't. You have like 250 healthy people that have been recycled all around. When you go into, which is not immediately apparent because nobody, there isn't, it's not shown publicly. It's not disclaimed. So when you think about that, it's difficult to find controls. And usually what's good, you actually simulate the controls. You simulate healthy people because they're more difficult to find. And then there is an ethical concern of working with them and everything. So imagine that we can now simulate a healthy individual in response to some stimulus that's of interest for your study. That's your digital twin. So you as a healthy control have a digital algorithm twin.
Yeah. So I can see, like so many positive sides to that. For example, not just, accelerating, and you said, ethical implication and accelerating research. I guess that this is, a major game changer in R&D, for example.
Yes.
So you don't have to wait now, but also not just in clinical research, probably, also replicating environments. You want to develop a medical device, or not just medical. I mean, the implication is even broader. You can use the technology across industries, but using this simulation of that kind, saves time, saves the money.
I mean, it's clear, right? You can feel it even before you actually see that. You're aware how powerful that can be. And it's interesting. There are, of course, again, we're talking about dark sides, right? So it's clear that if the model isn't working correctly, that you have to build it properly. And only everybody would have the digital twin if it were easy, right?
Yeah.
And so I do feel that this is something that needs to be validated, and it is validated, because ultimately you cannot become. This cannot become common practice if it fails. So it's there. We can do that. Another problem is that it's not easy to simulate patients, because in addition to normal variability of human beings, which is something that's addressed with this model, you have additional variability of a disease. And variability, they always stack. They just multiply each other. They grow a lot. So it's much easier to model just a normal variation in human biology. Also, we have a lot more data than all the nuances of a specific disease. And so we still have a lot to go to model a specific patient that has a disease, I think. But it's not far away. This is the major first step. This step was much bigger. So employing everything that we have to model a patient. I have to say, it's not just, we're talking about algorithms because, first of all, this is my space. I usually do this, we call it dry lab. I do this on a computer more than in a laboratory. But you can mix the two. There are stuff like organs on a chip. I'm not sure if you heard of that. And it's just as it seems.
I heard, but I'm not,
I haven't interacted with that a lot personally. It's in the end, even when we work with that kind of data, it's the measurements that we get. But this kind of sci-fi merging of putting a tiny organ in a microfluidic, in a contained environment, and then stimulating it with medication or electrical impulses or whatever is of interest to you, That's next level, Maria. And it's not new either. So again, I'm showing now that I am kind of disappointed again that I expected more and faster, even though I'm saying I'm not. I think in 2017 or 18, I went to a Web Summit conference, which was not just medical. It has stuff all around. Of course, it's all startups looking for funding, so you can see fringe stuff there. Fantastic stuff. One of the more impressive ones was a company that was actually had tiny intestinal organoids. Now, hear me out. Have you heard of an organoid?
No, not really.
No, you should, and it's just as weird as it sounds. So, starting from 2012-ish, we can actually we can produce stem cells from any cells. We can basically reverse the programming of each cell, just turn on its basic generative capabilities of a cell and say, hey, become a stem cell. Return to your stem cell state, and that, it is almost perfect, of course. It's not completely. We still have some concerns about that. But if you're not using it in the human body, you can use this stem cell to produce anything in a test tube. In vitro. So you can produce tiny organoids. You can grow it to become tiny human intestine, tiny human brain, tiny human something. No, it's there. It's not something.
It's not sci-fi.
It's not sci-fi.
But does that count like time traveling? If you're creating a stem cell
or another chance, getting something. It's you wouldn't believe. So when I first heard of a cerebral organoid, somebody was investigating the effects of Down syndrome on those organoids. So how can you mitigate the changes and what's the change in architecture, things like that. That wasn't even a huge study. It was just somebody from Turkey, from a small institute, just showing off that research in growing human brains in vitro. Like that's everyday stuff. Even back then, that was like 2017. So even back then, that wasn't major. It's not familiar to us because it's not clinically, again, sound. It's there hanging in the air. But why am I mentioning this now? Those intestinal organoids, what they were doing, this company, they were growing tiny intestines, which didn't have, of course, the whole morphology of the whole thing, but like tiny pouches. Why do they do that? Because instead of sampling your gut bacteria, and you cannot grow them in the lab condition because not all of them grow properly. They need near perfect biological conditions. You can grow them in a tiny intestine. They can it's your analog twin, as you said it. It's like of your intestine. It's there, and in that pouch, you can grow a full culture of your gut bacteria and do tests on it. So it counts as organ on a chip because it has a tiny casing. It held it biologically active and healthy, this kind of organoid. And this company, I haven't followed up back on them. I wish them luck if they ever see this. I think it's impressive. But again, this is not something that was considered time travel, as you said them. It was not considered as revolutionary as I have found it at the time. I'm not sure I would like to hear your impression. Why?
My impression is, okay, so now we have the hardware and now we have the software. But now we can do anything.
Yeah. Can we merge them? Is it time?
Yeah. So I have this organoid and I have all those, as you say, algorithms and stuff. So I can basically simulate anything.
No, exactly. And we have human users. We always had them. So what's missing? I'm not sure. So there are always many reasons why something could be lagging behind, but I don't see a good reason. It's not just a regulatory stall. In a way, there's something as if it didn't all come together naturally. I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure why.
Back to digital twins, we said, basically reproducing your patient, your control, right? But how much can it be useful in device development, medical device development?
I feel that for that it's even more appropriate because in the end the organs on a chip and the things that I described, I think that when I say that you are simulating stimuli. Usually, all those medical devices, they either measure something via electrical current, or they treat something with electric. So electrical current is very important. Most tissues, they have their own electrical activity. Those are usually called biopotentials, one of the commonly used words. So I feel that in the digital era, in the electronics era that we're living in, that this is easy to do and it's useful. And I've seen development of quite trivial devices, sorry to call them like that, but like, for example, that are detecting some movements which are used for gaming, they're medically not as relevant, maybe for some rehabilitation or something, but in the end, they won't be harming you. So those are small currents, they're just on your hand, they're sensors, you don't expect anything to go wrong because they're not connected to the power line, that you still have to go through all the checks. This is something that we want as a regulated society. This is what many of them demand, at least basic tests. So can you imagine if you were to treat a tissue with some sort of really small biological, with some currents to treat and change those biopotentials or measure them, you could do that in a simulated on an organ on a chip. This is so relevant because, again, usually those are tested on healthy people. They don't wish to do that. It's difficult. You want to simulate a range of conditions. You want to simulate for a long time. Is there something going on with prolonged exposure? What's the range of signals you can handle? There's too much to do to test all of that on all the patients in all those settings. And those things take a fraction of a second if you can just simulate them. And in the end, nobody wastes time, right? Those models.
Sounds almost like a cheat code in a game.
It does. It does, definitely. And again, this is the reason why we're mentioning that it's so much easier.
Yeah.
We simply need that. And in the end, it's not just medical devices. There are also completely algorithmic things which are useful for medical stuff. I want to emphasize that even though it's more difficult, we can do medical stuff as well. At least from everything I've seen, those models, they cannot be as general. So it's not one solution, like one size fits all, because then you will have the model that I mentioned. We said you will have the perfect digital twin of a human being that would work with any kind of analysis. We don't. Those are usually developed for clinical trials, for medication, for medical devices. Let me give you an example. If you want to test the medication any kind on a tissue, how would you go through that? You first have to assume on what layer of information it's working on. I mentioned all those DNA, RNA, proteomics. You assume that it will work on an RNA level. And RNA, from a domain perspective, is very good. It captures time changes. It's close to the origin, close to DNA. People usually take RNA as reference. And then you test people who have the disease, for example, and then you test healthy controls, you compare them, and then you get the differences in RNA expressions, in RNA quantities, and disease versus healthy people. When you unify all of that, each gene has their own expression that's quantified. There are over 20,000 genes, so you get a complex signature, like a pattern of expressions of RNA, of counts, if you will have it, that you can say it's a signature of your disease. Right. So bunch of RNAs, some of them, not all of them are active in all cells, in all diseases. It's very specific. There are so many combinations and intensities to go through. And then when you have your disease signature, you go through a database that has signatures of different substances and drugs, like medication. And the idea is, if you say that RNA is the place where it all integrates, where it all comes together, it's also maybe supposed to be the place of effect. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to find from a database any kind of well-known medication and to repurpose it for your disease. Why? Because if they have opposite signatures, they might cancel out. So in a way, you're mathematically finding something that will cancel the signature of your disease. Why is this so powerful? First of all, we have found so many substances, so many drugs. It's easy to repurpose them because we know they're safe. We know they're profiles, we know how they're metabolized, we know it's much easier to take an existing medication and repurpose it than completely develop something from scratch. That's clear, right? But it's not only just one drug. You can quantify it. You can say what concentration you should have. You can do a combination of two drugs. You can maybe get the full signature from a combination of drugs. You've certainly heard that chemotherapy, it can have like cocktails of drugs there. So the options are, and it's there. This is not something that's coming now because of new technology. It's been done 10 years ago because somebody had the foresight to gather all those signatures. Again, going through the data. So data is your building block for those digital twins. So we can do medication, we can do medical device, but it has to be specific for your tissue, for this disease. And we have many many digital twins, right? Yeah. They're not each other's digital, they're our digital twins in our tissues. There are many alleyways that are opening right now. Not all of them will pan out completely, but it really is exciting time. I am going back to the question like how do I see this revolution and evolution? We don't see it as patients, but as people at least somewhat involved in the backstage of patient treatment, that many things are coming. And these are exciting times.
Yeah. And, I feel that we don't even need to think just about, high tech, the high tech part of it, because I feel that a lot of problems currently in the medtech industry also have to do with the shortage of from nurses, medical staff, so whatever, technology can make it easier for them, these are all small pieces, but they fit together and I guess can contribute so much, just
because they have so many small problems, right? Yeah. Medical professionals.
Yeah. So just being able to, automate any kind of process, I feel that it can, give us so much.
Yeah, there's no need to go through. When we say cancer, it's when you go. That's of course that's a noble thing, but in the end, people are harmed in the medical system by trivial stuff, by scheduling problems, by logistics problems. So it doesn't have to be. It's very noble to create a nurse scheduling algorithm. It's a well-known thing. It's cool to maintain electronic records. It's cool. Somebody has to host those models, that data. It doesn't have to be curing the cancer.
Yes.
You can cure problems like congestions, chaos. Those are all things that harm the patient just as much as pathogens or problems. It's tangible. You can see it when even in the most developed systems, there are shortages, there are human errors, there are simply problems that can be mitigated with the use of modern technology even better now than 5 years ago.
Yeah, I obviously cannot speak from the point of a medical worker, but I can speak from the point of a patient. We all know the frustration. If it takes too much time to schedule something, you'll be like, okay, maybe I don't need to go to have this checkup. So, and maybe if I had this checkup 5 years ago, I wouldn't be.
Definitely.
So taking care about the entire cycle and seeing how I can leverage, technology and all this cross-functional expertise that you mentioned, all stakeholders working together, and it will build up to the big goal. If the big goal is treating cancer, it all starts with me visiting my doctor.
It does. This is also a huge area. It's not personalized medicine maybe, but prediction algorithms. We all know that prediction is basically the most common use case of modern AI. And part of the reason why we're again saying that it goes slowly in medical fields is because other commercial companies like maybe streaming services or something, they're making very advanced recommendation systems. The financial systems are predicting who is going to default with their credit. There are so many advanced prediction applications which are used for something that we feel is less important than human health and well-being. So we're wondering, why are they not doing the similar thing? Because not everything is about prediction. Simply, much of it is in understanding, in developing. I won't go into. It's clear that it's not only just predicting who's going to get sick in the end. It's maybe also curing them, maybe. But I have to say that prediction is important in that aspect. diagnostics is important. You have to do screening. You have to take radiation doses by doing CTs or doing any kind of imaging that's ionizing radiation. So in a way, if something can predict your risk, it can make you you can catch it early, you can get meaningful diagnostics, and then it will save on unnecessary costs and time for people who are not at risk for something. Yeah. So this is another area that we haven't discussed before. Prediction algorithms in their full power, like in commercial companies, they are something that are also practically important, because in the end, we're all human. We don't want to waste time going to the doctors if we don't have to.
Yeah, and that brings us back to why there are not too many healthy peoples involved in all those studies, right?
Right. Yeah.
why it's a problem to
you just shy away from that. Yeah. I mean, when we all at the university where I teach, we also have, it's the largest medical center in Serbia, and they say it's one of the biggest in the world because we are a centralized country. I have to tell you, like cab drivers, if you have a need to call them, they don't like going there at all because they don't know what they'll see, because people are going from hospitals, they have wounds. It's a place of, unfortunately, of unhappiness. So it is something that we shy away from if we don't have to. And this is something, again, this is valid. It's one of the things that the models and modern science and technology can take away from us, that kind of hurt and discomfort.
Yeah. So basically, taking the burden off, not just for you as the individual, but the entire system, which makes it much, much better for the others.
There's that as well. There's like a digital twin of humanity. Like
no.
Everybody and everything can have a digital twin, which could be like for population studies, for maybe epidemiological studies. So in the end, we could maybe take into account some movements and changes on a larger scale. So this is, I know it seems ill-defined, like what the digital twin is, because you have them in the non-medical industry as well. But the digital twin is any kind of model which is supposed to basically alleviate some real-life testing on any system, individual or human-like, or maybe even physical machine. So it's not just the medical field. Automotive industry is also developing that. So this is something that if we are not pioneering in the medical industry, we will piggyback on that from other important fields.
You mentioned automotive. What I found really interesting, like if we didn't have this technology and we need to test like fog lights, then we have to wait for fog. And what if there's no fog for like a month? You cannot test it. Which is
realistic, right?
Yeah, you cannot test. But here, if you can simulate fog, then you can accelerate it.
That's very good, and it also, I'm not sure if for me, the takeaway from what you just said is that you have to model a fog. So any entity has to have its own model. You cannot have one model that will model all the conditions, all the weather, all the climate stuff. So every aspect of the weather will have its own model. This is why this is not something that will be solved quickly or easily. We will have an ecosystem of models for a lot of stuff, and this is normal. So we shouldn't be surprised that we have so many models. It's not just a hype and trend. We will need that in order to achieve accuracy. We will need specialized models.
Yeah.
That works the best.
Okay, as we're reaching towards the end, I want to ask you something, because you mentioned like we are piggybacking, like HLS will be piggybacking on automotive. How important is that cross-functional element? Not just technology within a single space, but looking at it more horizontally.
Definitely. I actually, this is not planned, but you gave me a segue for something I like to mention as this interdisciplinary collaboration and basically utilization. An example of digital twins, again, I apologize if I've been keeping it general. One of the best examples that I know of is the Ognjen Institute in Austin, Texas. They have a collaboration, the medical professionals have a collaboration with the aeronautical engineers, so people who build airplanes, right? And they were machine learning experts in that situation because they were obviously modeling their own systems. You cannot crash planes randomly. That's even more difficult than cars, right? And they actually used a bunch of MRI scans, which were made available by the clinicians, and they developed digital twins for brain tumors. Glioblastoma is one of the worst cancers you can have in your body. Very high mortality rate, especially the worst one you can have in your brain. It's something that's there are many options, but none of them are quite efficient. It's very important to personalize the radiation dose. It's noble tissue. Every millimeter of tissue is important. You cannot easily remove any parts. So being conservative is very important. Lowest radiation dose, lowest possible margin of cutting. They made a model that can predict all that, the responses of patients with glioblastoma, again specialized to different therapies. This has been made available by the collaboration of space engineering, aeronautical, and medical professions. This is the example. It's fundamentally important that we do that, because in the end, first of all, the information is leaking from one area to the other, and then you cannot just be a jack of one trade, but you cannot really be the jack of all trades either, right? So I think that's the message. You have to, we have to start merging at least 2 by 2, right? And then we'll see whether it gets us to the unified field of everything. But let's go slowly.
So would you say that the future is optimistic and it's a great time to be alive?
It is. Hopefully we'll talk again in a few years and we'll see how our predictions were. But let's say we're optimistic and we're expecting huge shifts to come in the near future.
Thank you for this great conversation, Ogi.
Thank you, Marija.
HTEC.